I was really working just with my own artwork for many, 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 many years. And then it was sort of like the cocoon burst, and I was like, all right, I got to start having some shows. I gotta do this. And I did. But like there was a really big lead up to that. And I feel like now with more opportunities, which is great, people sort of like put themselves out there when their work is like very unformed in some ways. It's taken me a long time to accept the kind of artist I am. I think it's really been interesting to have a long enough life to have all these different phases of making artwork, and to sort of understand how they relate to each other, and to be willing to go back and think about those years, and those years when I had to like close the door and just like work, because that's when I was having shows in New York. So like I had to produce, like I really, really had to. I wanted to, but it was there was some pressure. So I grew up in a family, 5 girls, 1 bedroom. So nothing was really only mine. So my art was like my special, precious side gig. And I think I held it very close to my heart. And I grew up on the Upper West Side, so the Met was pretty close to me. And it was a normal part of my life. But what I've found talking to people that are from other places is that it was easier to feel like what they were doing was like important and good. Whereas in New York, you're surrounded by like Picasso, Matisse, Louise Bourgeois. Like you're just naturally this like little fish swimming along. And I find that friends and my husband, who grew up in small places without a lot of exposure to actual artwork, I mean, maybe they looked at books and they were good at art, whatever that meant at the time. They sort of thought like, yeah, pretty good at this. So it took me a while to like feel like I was good at it. I'm working on it. No, don't put that in. When I come to the end of something, of a phase of working, I'm just like, I don't even want to think about it anymore. I don't want to look at it. And now I'm at the phase, I think it's maturity, that I'm looking back and I'm like, oh, that was kind of interesting. Like I couldn't really look at like the really super figurative work that I did early on for so long. It just made me so uncomfortable, because I would just feel like I'd look at it and feel like, oh, all I could see was, oh, you were trying so hard to like prove that you could make something good. And it was sort of painful to look at them. And now I look at them and I go, look, those are cool. Like I could never make that now. Like who was she? And I'm sort of interested that I can look back. And also that I'm seeing that I can see some full circles. I can see some, like I'm interested in the body again. But when I stopped being interested in painting people, partly it was, can I make an interesting painting that doesn't have a figure in it? Can I just paint color? Can I just paint from my intuition? Like, what would that be like? And I did that for many years. And then that got a little bit like, okay, well, that's fine. And I look at those paintings, I'm like, they're nice. But like the body was just like knocking at the door. And so now it's back. But I'm figuring out how to do it again, because I'm not interested in painting specific people or portraits. And then this is what happens. It's like I get the colors and the shapes to a certain point, and then I just think, I get kind of itchy. Like I want more. Like I want more. It's nice. I like it. It's good. It's fine. But it's just like it's not like spicy enough. So I want something more. And so the feet have come some from my imagination, some from paintings that I love, where I'm just cribbing the position of the feet and then figuring out where it would go in the painting and why or that might or might not work. And then doing some life drawing too and bringing those in. But I have no idea what's going to happen next. I never know what I'm going to paint when I start working. If I'm thinking like, is it good or bad, that kind of takes me off track of like the initial impulse of making it, which really I think has to come from a very non-judgmental field. Like I can always find something that's working, and I can always find something that could maybe be working better, as opposed to like, oh, this is so great. Like that's not very helpful. Or, oh, this is so bad. Equally unhelpful. A lot of times I just have to stop working on something because I'm disgusted with it, or I'm so uncomfortable, or I don't know what to do, and I'll look at it again and I'll think, oh, like, okay, well, that's an interesting place to have stopped. So those that language helps me better than good or bad. I'm quite quick to say other people's work is good or bad, which probably just says a lot about me and my ability to be snarky and make snap judgments. And then sometimes I'm just blown away by things, and that's rare, but it happens. And I certainly have my favorite people that I still can look at, over and over and over again. And it interests me. I guess one thing that interests me is the rate at which I'm getting information from a piece of artwork. And sometimes I really feel like I'm, can just sort of look at it and I'm like at a jogging pace. I'm like, oh, okay, got it. And other times I really feel moved to like stop and stay and look and see what comes and maybe look at it again. And then some paintings that I love and want to look at over and over and over and over again over years. I had a lot of art school training in painting the figure and drawing the figure. And so I thought that was what I did. I was a figure drawer. And when I left grad school, I realized I was not interested in painting models or friends. So I started looking at photographs. And I found some boxing pictures because there was a lot of the body showing naturally in the habitat of being boxers. And I didn't really want to do like nude figures because that's like a whole other genre in a way, but still with the boxers, I could get like a lot of the body that I was interested in. And then with the baseball players, I think at that point I was like in my 30s and I hadn't had any success. And I just would look at these old pictures of these baseball players who like no one had ever heard of. It wasn't like the Joe DiMaggios of the time. And I would just think like, well, maybe I'm just going to honor this fellow. And I think I also just really enjoyed like getting it right. I enjoyed making something that looked like something else. Yeah. I feel very tender toward them. So I was 35 when I had my son, and then I was 38 when I had my daughter. And it changed my life so much. I think the reason that I was ready to have a kid is that I sort of thought, okay, I've been painting all my life. If that's all, if that was my whole career, fine. I want to have a kid. Like I'm willing to just like throw it out because I didn't know what it was going to be like to have a kid. And at that point, I hadn't even had like I had like little things. I hadn't had a big show in a gallery at that point. So I hadn't had any like proper success. And interestingly enough, after I had my kid, I got my first gallery in New York. So that's interesting to me that happened. I had to be when they were young, I had to be very much like, okay, we have a babysitter for 4 hours, come in, close the door, paint. And it was just like, none of this like breathing, how does it feel? We're going up and down. It was just like, okay, you have 4 hours. So it made me very efficient for those years. I also feel like I held on to it like for dear life a little bit, just to keep a little bit of that for myself. My husband and I, we would sort of say like, okay, who's on patrol? And if you were on patrol, you were with the kids. And if you weren't on patrol, you could be in your studio. It was an interesting negotiation, although his art was making us money and mine was not so much. So that's a pretty big difference. Yeah. 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 His art was paying the mortgage. Mine was, buying soup, I think if you want something from your work, it's kind of dangerous. If you're doing it because you want something from it, I think that if it works out, it can be Gerhard Richter, like if it works out, all power to you. But if it doesn't work out in that way, I think wanting something from it and seeing like, is it giving something back to me? Like, I don't think that's really, it's sort of like having a kid. Like you can't really look like, are you giving something back to me? Like, what am I getting from this? Like, you can't really look at it like that. You have to decide that it's like, you want to pour your heart and soul into this thing. And if you want something back from it, like, I think you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be making that calculation on and on again, over and over again. And that seems painful. But I think it's tough for young people now. I don't know why. I want to say it's harder. I don't know if it's harder or not. It feels harder in some ways. I don't know. I feel like everything's more expensive. I mean, again, that the economics of it seem tough. I think it's also harder. I think social media, I'm not like anti-social media, but I think when I was a young, like 20s person, I wasn't watching all my peers, like, or the, 1% of my peers, like, have all this great success and feeling like up against it, and I think now, I think that's much more the case. Like, you're comparing yourself to like the whole world now in a way. And I don't think I was doing that. I think that narrow focus is, I think I was lucky to have a narrow focus. I think it allowed me to develop, over years. I also think that you figure out if you want to keep making it. It's not easy. It's not an easy path, particularly. Most artists come to those points where those junctures where it's like, okay, like it's not, I'm not getting success, or I didn't get a good review, or I can't get any shows, or I'm not making any money, or how is this sustainable? Or, every time you get to one of those junctures, I think you have to make a decision. And I think the people that keep making art, it's like they sort of don't have a choice. I mean, I think if you stick with it long enough, something might happen. So that's one reason to keep going. There's stuff I want to figure out how to do. Like, I want to make something good. I do want to make something good. I have a lot of ambition for the work, more than for myself, I guess. Maybe for myself a little. But, I have time to figure things out, and I really want to use it well. You do have to have a little, what's the word? Something that's a little irrational. It's not solving any of the world's problems. I mean, I really admire artists who are like tackling, equity in all areas, on every level, socially, governmentally, economically. Like, I admire that work. Sometimes I really like it, but like, that's not what I'm doing at all. So it really is a very internal gauge that I just want to figure this out. I want to get in there and make some good paintings, and having conversations with people who are also doing that and making interesting paintings and like figuring out how to make those choices. I love that more than anything. I love talking to other artists who I can relate to in that way. It's very, very satisfying. I mean, one thing I will say about being in Maine is I really have enjoyed being part of the artistic community here, the art community here. And I didn't really feel that when I first moved here, because I had I moved here and then I got a gallery in New York. And so I was sort of more focused there for a long time. It took me a while to like reconnect with what's going on here. And it's amazing. Like, I love being a part of the art community here. It's so supportive and so many good artists. And yeah, it's really very, it's been very nutritious in my development.